This is a simple and complete guide on how to make a blog post in WordPress. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Martin Christofferson. I've been teaching e-commerce and how to create content for many years now, and today we'll be walking through step by step what you need to know about when you're creating your first blog post on WordPress, and also the most common mistakes people do, and tips and tricks in order to make your blog writing out just a little bit easier. I'm not going to mention how to work with SEO or how to make a blog section of your website or navigation, because this is only going to be a walkthrough of all the basic tools you need to know about when you're writing a simple blog post. And make sure you're staying to the end, because I'll be going through the most common mistakes people are doing when they're starting out and the best tips that expert can give you regarding how to make a good blog post. Alright, so first off, we're going to take a look at the dashboard. It's very simple. We just click on Post and click on Add New. So I'm going to walk through an already existing blog post because it'll be easier to show with examples what you can achieve with different tools. And I'm going to walk through it step by step from the top, which in this case is the title. Notice that in the title I could have written the just soundproofing a garage, but if I add things like most simple ways or top 5 ways to, or a complete guide step by step, and also with pictures in brackets, if I add things like that, it's called title tag modifiers. You don't have to remember that terminology, but the point is that it gives you a bigger reason to click. The title is going to sound much more attractive than if I just write soundproofing a garage. Next up, we have what's called a permalink. Permalink is the last part of a URL. URL is what you can see up here. And we usually want to make sure that the permalink, the last part of the URL, is written as short as possible. It should not include words like with pictures or more simple ways or stuff like that. Make sure that it's descriptive and also as short as possible so that people who can click on it know exactly what they're going to get. And what we're trying to avoid by making this is something like what we have here. If I just show you this, that is being highlighted, you're not going to have any idea what you're going to get if you click on a link that has this written in it. So that's what we're trying to avoid. It also increases what's called an SEO value. Simply, it will affect how you will rank on Google, but it's not a huge factor. Next up, we have Add Media button. It's very simple. You put the cursor, you put where you want your media to be displayed. It could be a video or it could be a picture. In this case, we're going to just take a random picture from my computer. I click here, I take Add Media, Upload Files. Now notice you cannot have huge files, just things that are 250 megabytes or smaller. Click here. And this is already on my laptop, so I'm going to click on this picture, double click it, there we go. And now I select this one and I press insert into post. And there we go. Now this will be, and then I can change how big this should be and so on. We're going to talk about pictures a little bit later. So, and now obviously I just put in a picture here. This doesn't really look so good, so I'm going to remove it just like that. And let's move on to paragraphs and different headings. Right, so this is really important because it helps Google understand what you're writing about, and it'll also affect your table of content, which we will see in a second. Obviously, here we just see normal text, nothing strange going on here. But here, when we have the titles "How to Soundproof Your Garage Door," then Google is going to understand that the text that is under it is obviously going to be about the garage door. But if I change this so that it's not an H2, it's paragraph text, then Google just sees, oh, this is some bold text, no biggie, and it's going to think that all of this text is a part of the introduction, which is not true. Another thing that you have to remember is that the entire article can only have one H1, which is the main title. So you should never put an H1 somewhere in the text. And I want you to think of the H1s and H2s and H3s and so on, just like the structure of a movie. Because a movie has the main title, and then the movie is divided into chapters. And the chapters are divided into scenes, and the scenes into cuts. In the same way, we can take a look at the table of content. We can see that we have the main title, H1, and then we have the H2s, which are these. And it just makes sense that if we're talking about how to soundproof a garage, we're talking about how to soundproof a door, the walls, the windows, the floor, and the ceiling. Right? So that's a very natural way that you can structure it up. And if we're only looking at how to soundproof your windows, it makes sense that we're dividing it up into acoustic plugs, blankets, and curtains. So this is what I would expect from a writer regarding how to structure things up with H2s and H3s. Next up is bolding and making things italic. Now, you probably already know what this is. If I just mark any text like this and I press bold, then now it's thicker. And if I don't want it to be like that, I just do the same thing again. Italic, it makes that it tilts a little bit. And it's really useful for in order to increase readability. Bloggers usually only use bolding, but if you're writing academic papers and citations and mentioning a lot of titles, then italic is very common that people are using. And if you're using bullet points, then I don't have a preference or recommendations regarding which ones you should use, regarding if it's bullet point list or if it's numbered list. Partly because it depends on what subject you're writing about and which culture you're in, which language. But if you want to use it, you just mark the text that you want it to be in bullet points, click here, and again. And if you want to change it to a number list, you click like that. It's no biggie. Now, there are hotkeys for everything here. Now, you just have to luckily hover over each one of these, and it'll tell you exactly how to do it. Next up is how to make block quotes. Very simple. You press any paragraph that you want to stick out a little bit. Let's say that this part is a quote from an expert. I just press anywhere on the quote and I click like this. Now it sticks out a little bit. Now keep in mind that you can only do this when this paragraph has been separated properly, because now if I press Shift Enter just to separate them a little bit, what's going to happen now is if I click anywhere up here or up there, down there, and I click, then the whole thing is going to be moved, right? So make sure that you are pressing Enter so that the paragraphs are separated properly for this function to work. And if you want to change the alignment of a specific paragraph or the entire text or something, you just mark the paragraphs that are relevant, or you just click on the paragraph that is relevant and you click over here if it's going to be on the right, left, or center. And let's say that I have found, if we're talking about linking, what I do is that let's say I've found a really cool link, and I say read more about it here. There we go. And I want some people to click on the word here in order to be transported to this article. All right. What I do is that I mark the URL thing that is up here, Control C, and I mark the text that I want to be turned into what's called an anchor text, and I press over here. And now I just press Control V, paste, and it's done. And now, in the finished article, anybody who clicks on the word here is going to be transported to that article. Next up is the read more tag. It's very simple. Let's say that I'm writing about stud wall construction and I have a lot more that I want to share with the reader, but I know that most readers really don't care. So I make an alternative for them, that I say that if you want to read more, then you can just click here in the finished article. And I add a couple of fake paragraphs like that. And now what's going to happen is in the reader article, it's going to say read more. To read more, click here. And when they do, then this is going to be shown. Otherwise, it's not. Next up is this button. It just gives you more alternatives to work with. This one just makes you draw a line over a specific word or paragraph that you mark out like that, and now you can see there's a line above it. This one is just a line that it's made for readability purposes. Let's say that I'm switching subjects, then it could be good to make it clear by just putting a line there. So, and the next one is very often very useful. I just scroll down to this part. I've left it blank on purpose. Let's say that I want to type in this text. It's just it could be in the format of a H2 or something, or let's say that this is a really huge text like this one. There we go. I don't want this to be really big, and I don't want this to be an H1, right? So notice what's going to happen if I just press Control V, but I have this typed in. Now it's going to be typed in when I paste it as plain text, right? And now I'm going to press Control V again, but without this one. And now it's in the form of H1, much bigger. And the next one is simply that if you are copying in any text that has some bad HTML coding, or it has the wrong font, or it has some broken links in it, then you can just mark the text and press clear formatting, and that will do the trick. Is the special character section doesn't have all the special characters, obviously. It doesn't have smileys and whatnot. Doesn't even have all the most common European characters like Polish symbols. It has the umlaut, but it doesn't have the German double S. It has the euro, and some of them could be useful, but obviously not a complete list. The next two buttons are very simple. They increase or decrease indent, which, as you can see, just moves the text a little bit to the right. If that's a little bit too much, let's go back. And obviously this is only for readability purposes. And if you regret something, let's say I accidentally deleted that, no problem. I want to undo that, but I've reminded myself I actually wanted to remove that. Then I just redo the thing that I did. All right. And next one is a complete list of all the keyboard shortcuts. Next up, let's take a look at images. What you need to remember about images is that they have to be HD. They also have to be mobile friendly, which means that if you put the image too big like this, it's not going to look too good on a cell phone or smaller devices. So make sure that they look nice and neat so that they're adapted to the size of each screen. Also, as you can see here, we can have the alignments. We can also change what this one links to, a media file or some custom URL. Also, make sure that you're always writing what is on the image in the alt text, because this tells Google what is the most relevant thing. Google actually has no idea if the most relevant part of this image is the number over here, the t-shirts, the guy, or that this is a garage. So that's for SEO purposes. Okay, and let's say that we want to also add a video. I'm gonna scroll down to somewhere here, for instance, just a lot of text, and I don't like that, so I want to change this by adding a video here, and just adding a link like this doesn't really look too good. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go to a YouTube clip that I really like. I've never actually seen this YouTube clip. This is just an example. I'm pressing the share button over here. I'm pressing embed, and then we have to wait a little bit, and then we get the code right there. I copy it. Notice that I can change so it also says from where it should start, but I'm not going to press here, so it'll start from the beginning. Now I've copied this. I go to over here, and what I do now is I click precisely where I want it to be placed, and now I go up to the right hand corner. I press text. And now I'm not touching anything. The only thing I'm doing is I press Control V, and now it popped up right over there. All right. I don't do anything else. I press Visual, and there it is. So now that we've looked at the most basic tools, let's take a look at what's going on over here. If we press this button, then we remove all the useless clutter while we're writing, unless we swipe our mouse over it. And over here, we have the HTML form, which is simply the coding for this. It could be relevant if you're going on a detail level, making small changes manually, but usually you don't need this, especially when you're a beginner. Also, on the top right corner, we can change the thumbnail quality, which means the quality of this picture over here. And we can now take a look at the preview of how this blog post is going to look like. And I strongly recommend that you do this every time you're finishing a blog post in order to see if there is some mistake you've done. And this is a great example. As you can see in the text editing form, we couldn't see that this is going to pop up because this is just a link, right? So make sure that you are scrolling through in the preview mode so that you don't see mistakes like this, because this tells me that obviously I shouldn't have two videos after each other, so I should probably remove this one or that link. And I found that out because I looked at the preview. Let's see, visibility public. This simply means if it has been published or not, or to what kind of people are going to be able to see this. For example, people who could be subscribing to my website could only be seeing this. Revisions tells me how many times people have changed this. This is a 3,000 word article written by 2 writers, which means that obviously there are going to be a lot of edits. When it was published, readability and SEO. This is an external tool called Yoast. I really recommend that you guys get it. It helps you understand what Google is looking at in order to know whether your blog article should be on the top of Google or not. And this section is just for categorization. For example, on my page, if you go to the main website, bestsoundproof.com, you're only going to find 2 categories. Now, because I have put this blog article in the category soundproofing tips, it's going to be found if you click here together with many articles that are just in the category of tips. So let's see, this one, tags, just ignore this. This was a tool that people used for SEO purposes many years ago, and Google just completely ignores this. So just let's skip to the next one. Feature image, very simple. It's, if we scroll down, we can see that these are the feature images. These are only going to be seen from the outside when somebody is going through all of the articles on the outside. So you're never going to find these. Yeah, this is an example, I guess, that if somebody one writer forgot to put an image here, and as you can see, this image cannot be found anywhere in this whole article. And you just add one by clicking on the image and upload files, or take one from the media library. It's as simple as that. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, we will see some tools that could be very helpful. For example, Yoast, you're probably not going to have this in your WordPress because this is a plugin that you need to install. It's really easy though to get it, and I strongly recommend it. It helps out a lot with the SEO. Meta description is what can be seen when somebody is Googling. For example, if I say, I don't know, running shoes. I know I misspelled that, but the point is, over here we can see the meta description. So we need to fill this out, preferably less than 90 characters. That describes what's on this blog page. Credibility sentence, this is what's going to be seen right under the blog post itself. Next up, my top tips for how you can start out blogging. But before that, I'd be very thankful if you could write a comment on what you would like to see more of on my YouTube channel. I try to help bloggers as much as I can, and also new content creators. And if you could like and subscribe as well, I'd be very thankful. My first tip is that you need to have a rock-solid title, because nobody's going to read your article unless they click on it first. So make sure that it looks really attractive by adding things like a step-by-step guide, or the top 7 ways to, or things like that. Of course, it also depends on what subject you're covering. If you're writing a doctor's report, then maybe such a clickbaity title doesn't really fit. but make sure that you have a high click-through rate, because that will massively impact the amount of people who will actually read your article. Next up is that you need to have an extremely reader-friendly text. And by that I mean that you use bullet points, you include videos, that it's chunked up, which means that there are only like 2 sentences per paragraph. And that way it's going to be very easy to skim through your text. If you do that, Google will actually automatically see your text as more reader-friendly, and it will actually impact how high it ranks on Google. So bolding certain words and making sure that it's super easy to read, it's key to make sure that people will actually stay longer on your page. And same goes with structuring up the text the way that I showed you before, with H2s and H3s. If you divide everything up so that it's very much in bite-sized form, it's much more easy to consume the content. So keep that in mind. Once you've written everything, ask yourself, how can I make this text even easier to read? You can have graphs, you can have infographics, videos, and multimedia. That's going to help you a lot to keep readers reading on your blog. My third tip is that you need to have a rock-solid understanding of who is going to read your articles, because that will completely determine the way you should present your information. For example, if you're writing a blog about graphic design and how you should make a really visually appealing website, then you probably need a lot of visual examples. On the other hand, if you're writing a blog about SEO techniques and how to rank on Google in the fastest way possible, then there are going to be a lot of analytical people like me who need to know the statistics, the graphs, and all the infographics and so on in order to grasp everything from an analytical perspective. Tip number 5 is that you need to have deep and evergreen content. And by Google standards, it means that you need to have relevant and new research. You need to make sure that you're not just giving regurgitated information that you can find everywhere else. You also need to give advice and tips that will be relevant for a long time ahead. And also you need to write exhaustive material, about 2,000 or more words per article, if you want it to rank well on Google. It seems like, well, according to Google's own research, longer articles tend to do better. And people still want to obviously stay a little bit longer on them, which is a good ranking factor. If you compare the advice that I've given you, you should have a fantastic title, for example, or you need to make sure that you have great readability on your blog. These tips are going to be relevant in 5 and 10 years. Compare that to if I write a blog article, just saying that the hottest tips in 2020 in April is this and this. It's probably not going to be very, not a lot of people are going to want to read that in 5 years, right? Tip number 5 is that you need to SEO optimize your content. And I've spent more than a week making a very detailed step-by-step checklist that you can look through, and so that you can learn exactly what you need to check for your blog post to rank on Google. And this checklist is also used by digital agencies in order for them to work with their clients on their SEO. If you want to find out more, then just click on the link right over there. And this leads me to tip number 6, which is that you need to have a lot of internal and external links in order for Google to understand that you're providing extra value for further reading from quality sources. And I also want you to sell these links in the same way that I tried to sell my link. I said something very positive. I said that agencies are using this checklist, that it's a very extensive list, and it's going to help you rank on Google. Not only that, I also told you exactly what you're going to get if you're going to click that link. So you're not going to have any surprises. And that's why that is quite the opposite of what I've seen, what a lot of bloggers are doing when they just say, for further reading, click here. No one is going to click on those links if somebody writes it like that. And the good thing is, if you start selling the links like that, then it'll have a higher click-through rate, which means that Google is going to see that people are actually engaging into your links and staying longer on your website. And that in and of itself will make your website rank higher on Google. And my last tip is that you need to have your audience hooked as long as possible throughout your blog post. You can do that by, first of all, having a fantastic introduction that really keeps the interest going for the person who's reading, and also starting a lot of paragraphs with hooks. For example, you could write something like, the most important thing you need to remember is, or one thing you cannot forget is. If you keep writing things like that, then people will stay longer, Google will see that people are really engaged into your content, and you will, as an effect, rank higher on Google. And that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you want me to take a look at your website or your blog posts, then make sure to leave a comment down below, and I'll try to get back to you. And also, if you have your own top tip on what you should think about when you're starting out blogging, then please let us know as well. Until next time, take care.